My topic for tonight is going to be on community building and fostering a bond with your audience. Uh, Specifically, this is in the context of a pandemic, right, which we are currently in, where face to face meetups aren't done as often. Now, to clarify, uh, that doesn't mean that we're not going to cover anything face to face related, right? But we also have to get with the times and understand that face to face isn't as easy as it used to be. Yeah. But before we go into that, well, who am I and why am I qualified to talk about this? So, hi, friends. I'm EJ. I'm a Twitch streamer, content creator, and used to work in the game dev industry. So I used to be a game designer, and I also moonlighted as a marketing manager and a community manager, right? As they say in small companies, especially in game dev, you have to wear many hats, right? You have to be able to juggle a lot of things, and those are the things that I did. Now that I've left the game dev industry, I've started streaming full time on Twitch, and I've built up my own community, right? So it's been a while for me. I started streaming in 2020, and I became a full time streamer in March of this year. So I've only really started to approach it more professionally this year. However, I've seen at least some success in that regard. Right? I'm not a huge streamer by any means of the imagination, right? But I feel like I've done pretty okay for myself, right? It's become viable at least. So, why do we want to build a community, right? Well, as it says here, we want to get in touch with our members. We want to build relationships and trust, and we want to build loyalty and retention. But here's the thing, right? Being a judge is so much more than showing up to magic events and answering rules and questions, right? Can we agree on that, right? Being a judge is so much more than that, right? That's the usual public view of what being a judge is, but it's so much more than that, right? Being a judge also means being a pillar of the community, right? It means keeping in touch with the members, building relationships, and sometimes that means doing it online too, right? And especially now with not only the pandemic, but with the things that are happening in the world around us, right? For instance, gas prices are at an all-time high right now, right? Traffic is terrible in the metro, stuff like that. It's difficult to maintain these relationships, and they are important, right? As mentioned in a post in Judge Academy, right, where we talk about the different motivations for each judge, right? Specifically, the community bards, right? Community bards are motivated by forging connections with other people and taking responsibility for the overall game experience of those around them. And I think that's incredibly important, right? Not only does that bring more people into the hobby, but it also keeps people inside, right? And yeah, loyalty and retention, right, means that there's more players around, and it means that the hobby thrives. And of course, the most important reason of all, what is Magic without the gathering, right? That's the biggest part of it, right? Playing Magic on your own is not as fun, definitely, right? Okay, so we've nailed why we want to build a community, right? But I have mentioned in the title, right, fostering a bond with your audience. So it's important to set the difference, right? Why? What is the difference between an audience or a community, right? So the difference might seem small or minuscule, even, right? But we're going to do a deep dive on that because we want it to be clear, and it is important to know the difference, right? Because one builds off of the other. Okay, so an audience. Okay, so with an audience, right? First we have the one to many, right? So you're the one producing the content and people consume it, right? This means that you are the primary focus when it comes to the interaction. You are the one being heard by many, and while the audience can put in their own thoughts and opinions via things like the comments or chat or whatever else, you are the person with the mic. This is actually exactly what's happening right now, right? You are my audience, and I am the speaker, right? This happens in other places too. For instance, Facebook, right? Somebody creates a post, and the audience will look at the post, they'll reply to it, they'll like it, blah blah blah, right? The thing about this is, yes, there is still a little bit of back and forth there, right? But it's not equal, right? At the end of the day, the speaker is the one with the mic, is the one that's the focus of it, and the other people are replying, and the speaker can reply, and the other people can reply to each other, right? But it's not like an equal stage. Yes. Apologies if you guys can hear the sirens. I think there might be a fire nearby. Okay. The next part is the reach is also further, right? So when it comes to audience, right, uh, it, reaching further deals with the fact that most of us are staying connected through online means rather than face to face, right? I mean, this was true even before the pandemic, right? For most of us, we have our 9 to 5 jobs. We have our day to day stuff that we have to do, right? We have our families and whatnot. But when it comes to people like friends and whatnot who are not always in close proximity with each other, right? Usually we keep connected via the internet, right? So it's like platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, right, where we consume posts of people to see what's happening with them, right? Updates in their lives and whatnot. Sometimes we'll reach out when it comes to like Facebook Messenger and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it's usually online, right? But the thing is, this type of interaction, right, has its own caveats too. If you look at the last part, right, you are competing for your audience's attention, right? You are one of many fish in the sea, and algorithms are ever shifting. How many of us, right? How many of us have scrolled through our timelines through Facebook and whatnot, right? And have missed a post completely, right? Somebody might have posted something about their lives, and it might not even have appeared on your wall at all, right? Because of algorithms, which determine that, hey, you're not even really interacting with this person that much, so why should I even show this to you, right? Or this post didn't get a lot of likes and whatnot, so the algorithm decides to not show you, right? Or maybe you were just distracted, right? You weren't paying close attention at that time because you saw like a funny video that you wanted to find or whatever, right? Um, in the context of an audience, right? You are competing for attention, and that's difficult, right? On the other hand, with when it comes to community, right? The interaction is many to many. So this is when people mix together to communicate and interact on a more personal level. And that's important, right? This also happens, of course, in face-to-face meetups. For example, when there's a face-to-face judge conference, right, or there's a tournament or something, right? Face-to-face meetups are usually this, right, because you're all talking to each other, and it's all at an equal stage, right? But also, online platforms will usually allow this as well. Platforms usually, for example, in Facebook in the Philippines, right, we have a group called MTG Tambayan, which is basically the local Facebook group for all things Magic the Gathering, right? People will post there for memes, for sales, for news about Magic and stuff, right? And that works too, right? But other platforms such as Discord also exist, right? For those of you who are in gaming spaces, you've definitely heard of Discord, right? It's usually what people use to voice chat with each other while they're playing games and whatnot, so that they have communication. And we've also had some of our judge conferences over Discord as well, right? But Discord is also a powerful tool for building your own community platform, right? Because it's a space that you control, right? You can uh, make it so that uh, everything in there is like organized according to topic and whatnot, right? You can deem what you feel is relevant and whatnot, right? Stuff like that. Um, and also, of course, you have everyone's full attention, right? So because it's a closed off platform, right? Inside your community platform, there isn't anything that you're not allowing in there, as mentioned before, right? So for instance, if it's a Magic the Gathering community, right? And you are strict about it being just a Magic the Gathering community, right? You then people aren't allowed to talk about, say, I don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon or whatever, right? It'll really just depend on your community, right? And because it's a closed platform, uh, it's not going to show things like, for example, the post of, I don't know, your auntie about like her 60th birthday or something, right? It's not going to show other things. It's like a pure stream of things that are related to your topics that you want to discuss with your community, right? Um, Also, being in an enclosed space, being a member of a community, right, also makes it so that everybody is so much more comfortable because they're in their element, right? You're in a closed off space away from like public view, right? And you're surrounded by your people, right? You have your people around you, and it's just easier, right? Comfortable people are more honest with themselves, and you have the ability to let your hair down, right? You have the ability to just be yourself. And I believe, at least personally, right, for creating a community where people actually feel like they belong, this is crucial, right? Because it's kind of like when you have those secret group chats where it's just you and your friends, right? Stuff like that, right? You can actually be yourself, right? This is that, but slightly larger. However, of course, like the audience, right? It's harder to get discovered, right? Because of course because of the nature of the closed community platform, right? It is so much more harder to get discovered. It's not like Facebook or Instagram where there's an algorithm that promotes your post, right, depending on people's interests. Here, it's literally a link. You need to get an invitation to get inside, right? In my case, I have a private Discord that I have for my community, right? And people can conjure up that Discord link if they, for instance, go to my streams and whatnot, right? They'll be able to find the link there, whatever. Sometimes I'll post about it. There's like an event going on, right? Stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you have to spread your invites to the Discord platform through other means, through word of mouth, through messages, or through your social media platforms as well, right? So make an Instagram post about it or whatever, right? Post it in relevant places, like for example, if you wanted to attract Filipino planeswalkers, then you can post it in MTG Tambayan, right? Stuff like that. Okay, so why was that important, right? Why did we need to distinguish between audience and community, right? So the thing here is there's this thing called the community funnel, yeah? And basically, what this is you're trying to convert audience members to community members, right? And here's how that works. So at the very top level here, the green level, right? You have your potential audience members, yeah? These are people who are in the same ballpark in terms of interests, but likely don't know you. So, uh, again, example, right? People in your local Magic the Gathering scene. Yes. Um, Even if it's a relatively small community, let's say there's a few hundred planeswalkers in there, right? You don't necessarily know everybody, right? There will be familiar faces, sure. There will be people that you see every now and then, but at the end of the day, right? There's strangers in a crowd, and they're just people who have the same interest as you, right? There are people who like to sling spells and you know attack people until their life total is zero, right? It's like the same interests, but they've never met you and they have no idea who you are. So these are like potential audience members, but they're not quite there yet, right? And that's usually how you attract people like that, right? The next step is the engaged audience members. So these are like the ones in blue. Yeah. So these are, of course, the people who finally have started engaging with your content, but they will only engage with it sparingly, right? they've already heard of you because of your online footprint or your presence in the greater Magic the Gathering community, right? For example, if you've maybe judged at like a big tournament, right, a GP or something, right? Maybe they'll have heard of you, or maybe they'll have met you there, right? The more that you put yourself out there, both offline and online, the more you're likely to attract engaged audience members. Yeah. And then, of course, you have your core audience members. That's level 3, right? And these are your regulars. These are the people who are always around. People who you bump into at your local gaming store a lot. People who are always engaging with your posts. Always, you know how like sometimes when you have like you post a lot on like a certain group, right? And there's this one guy. There's one guy who always just like likes your stuff. Like within 10 seconds of your post, he's already liking it, right? There are people like that, and sometimes they're just a fan of you. Sometimes they just love your content, or sometimes they're just a friend, right? They're a friend who genuinely enjoys the stuff that you put out there. And these people are usually going to be the ones who are most likely to reach the final level, which is the closed community platform. And this is what we're going for, right? These are the people who want to be much more than audience members. They want to be your friend. They want to engage with you on a more regular basis, right? Things like that. Um, so the thing about that is it's important, right? Because as a judge, your sphere of influence also helps in you when you're performing your duties, right? Um, you have instances where you want more people to attend a tournament that you're setting up, or when you need to back a judge call or something, right? It's general stuff like that that usually helps when it comes to having a community to back you up, right? So as we get through each level of the funnel, the thing is, it is a funnel for a reason, right? As we go through each level of the funnel, we get fewer and fewer people who want to engage at that level, and that's just life, right? It's important to remember that it's not you usually, right? It's usually because of other factors. For instance, if you're a judge who lives in Manila, right? If you're a judge who lives in Metro Manila, and you find an audience member who probably lives in, I don't know, lives in Tokyo, right? Sure, they might like you and stuff, right? But because of the sheer amount of distance between you guys, right? You don't really have a lot of opportunities to bump into each other in person, right? Or let's say somebody lives in, I don't know, London, right? Because of the time difference, right? The posts that you make, the times in which you are active, that's the time when they're asleep, right? There are a lot of factors like that. Even just locally, right? If they live a little too far from you, right? If the traffic's too hard to get to your LGS or whatever, right? They might not engage with you or your content as much. The thing about that is usually people who make it to the closed community platform, there are people who genuinely want to be an active part of that community. And again, that still can be boiled down further, right? Let me give you an example. Um, so for me, right, I mentioned that I'm a streamer, and I've created my own Discord, and I I host community events and whatnot in that Discord, right? So for reference, I have about 1,200 followers on Twitch, right? A lot of those people are usually active on my own streams and whatnot, but it's never like one to one, right? Like it's similar to like YouTube views, wherein more often than not, the amount of people subscribed do not equal the amount of views in a video, right? That's already a funnel in of itself. But to give that context, right? 1,200 followers on Twitch, I only have like 80 something members in my Discord. And of those 80, I'd say maybe 20 people are actually like active. They're actually like posting day to day, talking with each other, talking with me, creating their own content, making memes and whatnot, right? Um, it's all a funnel, right? But the thing is, uh, again, that's just how life is, right? You might be a part of something like that, right? There are a lot of people out there who are just serial lurkers, or people who don't really actively participate in discussions and whatnot, but they're always there, they're always reading, right? They're always reacting. And to be honest, they're valuable too, right? They're all a part of the audience. We're all part of the same ecosystem. So they're all valuable, but of course, we're also looking for people who want to be part of the community. Okay, so uh, the next part here is things that we want to do inside the community, right? So let me present to you a quote by Brian Solis, right? And it goes, wait, where's my window? There. And it goes, community is much more than belonging to something. It's about doing something together that makes belonging matter, right? So basically, what that is the point of that all of it all is to get people to be part of the community, right? It means getting them to stay and be a part of a collective where we all become so much more than what we are as individuals. So it's like being there for each other, right? Celebrating each other's triumphs, comforting each other during dark times. Genuine relationships are meant to be built inside communities, right? It's not just you scratch my back and I scratch your back type, right? It's like genuinely making a connection with other human beings. And the way to do that usually is to provide value, right? You want to be able to provide things to your community that they can't usually get in other places. That's what usually gets them to stay. Additionally, of course, people who are inside your community, right, are people who also want to engage with you. So you are a part of that reason as well. So knowing that moving forward is important. Let's go here. Okay, so one of the things that we can offer, of course, is a good networking space. Now, here's the thing, right? Not absolutely sure if this is the case for other cultures in other countries, right? But at least in my own experience, networking is often deemed as a more, shall we say, impersonal way of getting to know people, right? It doesn't feel like it's genuine. It's more of like, oh, I'm getting to know you, I'm getting closer to you because of professional reasons or because I need you for something, etc. Right? But if you look at it, no, not really. Right? It should also encompass situations outside of professional instances, right? It can also be personal, it can be social in nature. And keeping that in mind is important because the thing about communities is that you meet so many interesting individuals inside the community, right? In the Magic the Gathering community alone, right? We have a crazy mix of like lawyers, doctors, teachers, programmers, writers, etc., etc. So there's so many people from all walks of life who just enjoy cardboard crap, you know? And I genuinely think that that's amazing, right? We all have this one unifying factor that already is such a good jumping off point for when we want to engage with other people. Yeah, because we already have that. We have Magic the Gathering in common already. That's huge. But of course, there are other things to it, right? So the first thing that we have to provide when it comes to providing a networking space, right, is opportunity, obviously, right? Because sharing a space with people often opens up chances to make connections, right? Um, I like to think about this in the same way as we created friendships in, say, elementary and high school, right? There's this thing called friendship via proximity, right? And that's just basically because you're around these people so much, you genuinely just become friends, right? Naturally, because you get to see what they're really like over time, right? And of course, that doesn't always mean that you like them. Doesn't always mean we become friends, but it becomes more likely, right? Because there's so many opportunities for a friendship to start, right? Being in a community is like that as well, but it also makes it a bit easier, right? Because again, you have that unified jumping off point. You all like Magic the Gathering. Immediately, there you have an icebreaker, right? Oh, what colors do you like? What colors do you play, right? Or what's your commander? What's your commander, right? What's your favorite commander, whatever, right? You already have like things to break the ice, and being in a community already is that, right? For instance, people who share funny memes are often like recognized inside the community, right? People who make posts that become the talk of the town for like a week or something, right? Things like that. Generally speaking, there will be opportunities, right? Uh, Next, of course, is consistency. Now, this is more on your side as the judge and as the leader of this community, right? But consistency is key, like most things, honestly, right? Um, Responding regularly to the people in your community and treating them fairly is of utmost importance, right? Um, here's the thing, right? The opportunity, the whole starting point of it, right? It's great, yes, but it's only a starting off point, right? It's just the start of a relationship. But if you're not consistent, if you don't reply to them as much as you can, if you're not engaging with them on your own, if you're just sitting there and expecting them to do their own thing or whatever, right? It's not going to work, right? You have to put in the effort as well, especially at the start, right? Because when the community starts small, being consistent, being there all the time, being very active, right, is how you get the engine started. Now, once the ball gets rolling and people, you know, become very comfortable in the community and you are more, they start like engaging with themselves uh, more regularly, right? You can loosen up a little bit, but at the end of the day, consistency is key. And even now, right? For instance, when I first started out with my own communities, right? uh it was actually a struggle. A lot of the time it felt like I was shouting into a void, right? A lot of the time I was talking to myself. A lot of the time there were things happening that sorry, there was nothing happening in the Discord that I uh didn't have a hand in, right? I needed to like jumpstart everything. Today, a few months later, since I started my own community, people are regularly posting their own stuff in the Discord on the regular, right? We have sudden gaming sessions popping up without me initiating them, right? We have D&D groups starting their own like campaigns and whatnot, right? It's good. It's nice that these things will happen. But again, consistency is key. And even today, I do whatever I can to like be consistent and be there, right? Because of course it's my community and it's my job, right? And then, of course, we have the basic endpoint for the networking thing, right? And it's, of course, it's friendship. So um, that's usually like the natural conclusion to being around people all the time and having a positive relationship, right? Eventually, it'll just grow into a friendship, right? Um, this is usually true for the people who are also consistent, though, right? Generally speaking, if you're consistent and they're consistent, right, it just turns into a friendship or, maybe something more. I don't know. Really depends on the nature of your relationship. But yeah, in the long run, the natural end point of all this is friendship. And it really is. It's wonderful, right? It's a good thing to have, right? You can never really have enough friends, I'd say. And the thing about that is it's true for them as well, right? Sometimes because of these networking initiatives, right, you'll find yourself in a weird situation where somebody in your community can help, right? Uh, Let me give an example. There was a time when I had like a skin problem, right? That I didn't know what to do, and it that was like during the height of the pandemic, and didn't really want to go to a doctor at that point, right? I didn't realize, but I had a doctor in my community, and they were just like, "Oh, can you send me a picture? Oh, it's that. Just buy this." Sometimes that just happens, right? And of course, it's not a transactional relationship where they have to provide their own value, right? But it's good to have, right? It's good to know that there are people out there who have your back, and vice versa, right? You're also there for them as they are for you. All right. The next thing is information, right? Now, this is also something that is provided generally in other communities as well, right? So, for instance, industry news, right? Um, Things like, for example, in the Magic space, right? Spoilers for new card sets, rules updates, card bannings, and whatnot, right? Um, for me personally, right, because I'm on Magic Twitter and I also am subscribed to the local Magic MTG Tambayan, right? That's usually like my general information feed when it comes to all things Magic, right? There's things like there's things like uh this the X and Y was banned, right? And I never would have heard of it were it not for community members who took the time to post those things, right? I genuinely have difficulty sometimes keeping up with so many news feeds and whatnot, right? There's so many things that you have to keep updated these days that keeping up is difficult, right? And having those channels to monitor, right? It's especially if it's like an all-in-one channel where all your interests are boiled down into chunks that you can consume every day, right? It's beautiful. It's great. But We also have information on things like events, right? Tournaments, pre-releases, even just general meetups, right? It's good to have these communities because it gives you a voice, and it also helps you invite people that you want to be there in the events that either you are attending or you are creating yourself, right? For example, just last weekend, right? Just last Saturday, me and a bunch of other people on Twitch met up to play some Commander, right? Bunch of other people in the community expressed interest, and they'd never played Commander before. So the veterans in the community, right, brought our boxes and boxes and boxes of like extra cards, right? We helped them build their own Commander decks, and we had just had a good time, right? Events like that become easy and possible to create in a community, right? Because of course, yes, you can post in like a larger group or whatever, right? But it's not going to be private. It's not going to be intimate, right? And usually you want to keep it inside the community, right? Then of course you have your promotions, arena codes, sales, group buys, and whatnot, right? Things that are also really good to discuss inside the community, right? Um, Genuinely speaking, again, this is a little bit like the industry news, but I have trouble keeping up with so much information that we're getting every day, right, on a daily basis. We have so much information flying around on the internet that how do you even keep up, right? So having these things within easy access is fantastic, right? And then of course we have your expertise. So people in the community can also be people that you can talk to about, for example, rulings. So of course, you are the judge. You are a judge, and you're probably like the judge in your community, right? So rulings and stuff, right? Very important to have that access when people need to ask those questions. But also, deck decks or discussions, right? I mentioned earlier that we've started recruiting new people into the hobby, and they have so many questions, and it's great, right? They want to learn about the stack. They want to learn about potential commanders for colors that they like, right? Things like that. And genuinely having that space for open and free discussion, it's fantastic, right? It helps them feel both safe. They're not getting judged for being newbies and whatnot. And it also feels more intimate, right? You get one-on-one discussion time with, or it's like a smaller group discussion with people who are at your general skill level, right? And you are being treated like a human being. It's great, right? Okay. Then we have, of course, entertainment. Now, this is a funny one because it isn't strictly speaking uh super connected to Magic the Gathering. But I do think that it's also important to note because entertainment or things that you guys will be doing together, right? Outside of Magic are also important because these are the things that strengthen your bonds, right? It's not just like posting things uh on the groups that you're in. It's not just playing Magic together. Because sometimes you want to do other things too, right? You have other things that you like, right? Like not everybody is just Magic's their entire life, right? So examples of that, online games, especially online games with low barriers to entry, no reliance on latency, or not a lot of reliance on latency, and big player limits. Because depending on the size of your community, right, that can be a problem too. Let me give you an example. Um, a lot of people in my community love playing Dead by Daylight. If you guys don't know what that is Dead by Daylight is a oops, sorry. Dead by Daylight is a video game where it's four survivors versus one killer, right? The objective of the survivors is to escape. The objective of the killer is to murder the survivors, right? And it's great. It's a fun game. However, the lobby limit is 5 players. And for a community like mine, that's kind of small because sometimes community nights will have like what 10, 20 people in attendance, right? We need to like have a bigger limit. So and also Dead by Daylight is a paid game. You need to like pay for it, right? And not everybody can afford that, right? Again, cost of living right now is crazy. So, for example, a good low barrier to entry game, the Jackbox Party Packs, right? If you guys have never played those, they're fun and an amazing way to play with multiple people, right? The Jackbox Party Packs, all that needs to happen is one person needs to own the Jackbox Party Packs and they need to stream their game on like Discord, right? Everybody else can participate via a browser or their phone. It's so easy, right? You just need to go to the website and play. That's it. That's all you need to do, right? And the player limits are also kind of nuts. Depends on the games, but some lobbies can have up to like 100 or so players, right? So it really depends on what your needs are, and it really depends on what you're looking for as a community, right? But genuinely speaking, these are great ways to uh, to foster relationships, right? Then of course you have watch parties, right? Movie nights, right? Or times when you like watch anime or TV shows together, right? That also works, right? Um, we do things where there's like a picking system where every time there's a movie night, right? Somebody's like uh in charge of picking that movie for the night for us, right? Or like there's considerations like, for example, are you the type of community where everybody's like loud and boisterous? You love to like laugh out loud and shout at like the movie that you're watching, or would you rather everybody be muted and just type everything on the text chat? Those are things to consider too, right? It all depends on your audience. But watch parties are fantastic ways to bond with your community, and they are genuinely fun, right? Like I'm sure most, if not all of you, have done this where like a sleepover or something, and you're watching movies together with your friends, right? It's fantastic, right? It's a great feeling. Having that even through online means is fantastic too. And then of course you have community nights where you'll do things as a group. That's not games or watching movies, right? Karaoke nights, talent showcases or whatever, or even just straight up hanging out, right? Sometimes that's all it is, or like playing D&D together, right? Some things that are outside of magic, outside of the scope of magic. These are all just fantastic things to do together. And again, to circle back to one of the lessons that we had earlier, right? The important thing when it comes to entertainment and bonding activities like this, consistency, right? Having a schedule. So, for example, for me and my community, right? Sunday nights at 9 p.m., it's always movie night, right? Always at 9 p.m. Community nights, Saturday at like 8:30 p.m., right? It's every week. Having that consistency helps because people can plan their schedules around your activities, right? And the thing about it is, it's great because a lot of the time, scheduling is the thing that kills group activities, right? Who here has tried to organize like a big activity for their friends and whatnot? And usually, like a bunch of people in the group will be like, "Oh, I can't on that day. Oh, I can't at this time." Blah 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 blah. Right? Having a schedule helps in that regard because people will know, oh, it's always on Sunday night. So on Sunday night, I'll keep this free so I can participate, right? Etc. And then, of course, for me at least, this is one of the more important things that we have to do, and it's our responsibility as the leader of that community, and it's creating a safe space. So let's start with safety, right? Have you guys ever heard of the term death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? The thing about here, this is that rooting out toxic behavior, ensuring that everybody feels comfortable, right? Sounds like it can be easy, especially if the offending behavior is like very big and very easy to call out. Yeah. But there are also instances where somebody will just be, slightly rude, will say something slightly out of line, right? And it's like too small of an offense to say something about it, right? That's what it means when it's like a death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? The person will usually be toxic at a low level, but will still be offensive, generally offensive to a lot of people, right? And the thing about that is maintaining your space as like some place that people can feel comfortable in is incredibly important, right? I actually learned this lesson the hard way myself as a streamer, right? When I was still pretty small as a streamer, right? Every single audience member that I could scrounge up was huge, right? Even just getting like to 5 viewers is like huge to me, right? So admittedly, I wasn't as good as creating that safe space because some of my earlier viewers and supporters, people who actually like subscribed, who actually like paid money to help me with my own streams, right? Were very toxic because I'd say because them giving money to the stream felt like they were entitled to be more rude or to be more demanding, right? The problem there is that when that happens, right, people will just leave because they don't feel safe, they don't feel comfortable, they feel like, oh, why am I subjecting myself to this, right? Why am I staying here? I'm gone, man. Right? Having that sense of safety inside your community is of utmost importance. And I can recommend genuinely, like if somebody's like being toxic and they're not listening to feedback, it's important to know when to drop the hammer, right? Sometimes you have to like kick somebody out of the community. And that's a tough decision to make, but it is one that we need to do. Yeah. Additionally, inclusivity is also important, right? Inclusivity. So the thing about inclusivity is it's all about being considerate towards people and their needs. And that also means equity over equality, right? What's the difference? Equality is making sure that everybody gets the same thing, right? Everybody gets treated the same way. But equity, right? Equity makes sure that people get what they actually need. And that doesn't really necessarily mean equality. Because the thing is, we as individuals have different needs and different things that we require not only to survive, but also to just thrive in like an environment. Like, let me give an example. Me myself, right? I very recently suffered from uh, major depression. Right, I got diagnosed, and yeah, because of that, I've had to be more, shall we say, careful about my interactions and the things that I let get to me. Right, and the thing here is that yeah, exactly, right. Differences are a strength, not a hindrance. Yeah, but also special consideration is required, as I say, right. Equity over equality, right. It's important to remember these things. So for myself, right, I did what I could to shield myself from anything that could trigger my depressive episodes, right. But at the same time, I found myself gravitating towards communities and circles of friends who were naturally like that already. You know, they were naturally considerate, they were naturally kind, and they were naturally like understanding of my condition, right? Stuff like that genuinely helps. And being inclusive and treating your members with kindness and equity, right? I think is incredibly important. Side by side with that, of course, is empathy, right? Um, Sometimes people will act in a way that isn't fantastic, right? I'm sure most of us have had moments like that, right? Most, if not all of us. But it's important to remember that everyone is going through their own struggles, right? And respecting people's boundaries is, of course, incredibly important. That said, though, that said, though, something to remember also is that having issues or having problems, right, is not a blanket license to be rude or to be disrespectful or to be abusive, right? It's important to have accountability and responsibility for your own actions, right? And sometimes that also means that, yes, you understand that this person is, suffering on their own and that's why they're lashing out at other people. But that also means that you have to protect your community members from said behavior, right? As they say, right? Hate the sinner, not the sin, right? I genuinely think that it's important to remember that yes, people are capable of change, and people should be given understanding and kindness whenever it's possible. But at the same time, it's up to you to weigh what's more important at the time, right? It's a difficult balancing act, but that is the price of being a community leader, right? And then, of course, we have tools. We have your safety tools, right? They are, of course, also an incredibly important aspect of community building, and can help people feel heard and feel more safe, right? Um, if you guys are familiar with like this recent TikTok trend where somebody will approach a bartender and ask for an angel shot, and an angel shot is like code for somebody's being creepy towards me or making me feel uncomfortable, right? That's actually genuinely a thing, right? um Having these safety tools, for example, having rules where people's dignity, people's like respect should be maintained, right? Things like that are important. But also having things like, for example, having um a panic button where somebody uh can ask for help or something in a way that's discreet and is without judgment is also incredibly important. I myself run a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons or other tabletop RPG games for my friends and whatnot, and we have this thing called the pina colada. And what that means is when somebody says pina colada during a scene, right? We stop what we're doing and we move on to the next scene, or we can talk about what's happening and we can make sure that it doesn't happen again, right? We also have things like lines and veils, where um, lines are things that people don't want to deal with and should never be mentioned in the middle of a game. And veils are things that can be alluded to but not discussed in detail, right? Things like that. Having these safety tools are incredibly important to maintain your community. Okay, so and I think for my closing remark here, right? You can use your community or you can serve them. This is said by like Chase Reeves, and the thing is, I genuinely believe this, right? Because the thing is, being in service of your community, right? Especially if you're doing it right and you have the right people around you, it doesn't feel like work, right? It just feels like you are part of a greater whole, and it's an honor to be that, right? I love being a part of that community that I've built, and I love being a part of this community that we have, right? The community of judges, right? So genuinely, right? I think that it's a pleasure to be of service. And honestly, like I said, right? The relationship isn't transactional in nature, right? But people will surprise you, right? They'll have your back and they'll be there for you when you need them as well, right? And that's fantastic. That's a good feeling to have, right? To have people who you can actually call your friends, your family, your loved ones, right? It's fantastic. So yeah, um, that's the end of my presentation, right? And right before we go to our question and answer section, I have a few seconds to talk about my my sponsors, quote unquote, for the talk. So if you guys live in the Philippines, right, I highly recommend CXMTG. They're cxmtg.com or cxmtg on Facebook, right? They sell pretty much most singles, Magic the Gathering products, and accessories too, right? They're very easy to deal with. I personally use the service all the time, and the owner is like handsome and he smells real good. He's right there in the chat. See, love that guy, man. CXMTG, absolutely fantastic. Also, if you're looking for binders, I have a friend in their business is One Up, right? They can find them on Instagram and Facebook. Their binders are of amazing quality. I think I don't know if they have this manufactured themselves, but genuinely, I bought one of the binders, the big blue one at the top, right? I bought one. Oh my lord, it's so good. It's also not expensive at all, right? Like compared to other binder brands and whatnot. So highly recommend checking them out. All right, that's the end of my presentation.